have spoken with you before about female genital mutilation and implored you to contact your congressperson to stop the practice that all too often is happening in this country. But around the world, more than 125 million women and girls who are alive today have had their sex organs cut, their lives forever changed by this barbaric act. Elise Young with Women Thrive joins me in the studio to talk more about what we need to do to stop this violence against women and girls. Elise, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
This is a subject that just makes all of us cringe.
Yes.
Very predominant in some African countries as well as some Middle Eastern countries, correct?
Yes. 28 of the main countries where female genital mutilation or cutting takes place are in Africa. We do have in certain communities in Asia and the Middle East often ongoing cases taking place.
Because I know the focus has always been on Africa. That's where the majority of this takes place.
Yes.
Obviously, this is cultural, political, social. What is the basis behind it, besides the fact that you don't care about women and you want to scar them for life? So
yes.
Let me move on past my personal bias here.
Yes, well, it's seen as a rite of passage, or at least that is what it's called. That's the justification in many countries when a girl is moving into womanhood. And it is seen by sometimes religious leaders, sometimes community leaders as a necessary step to help protect that girl's chastity in order to have her ready for marriage. And yet that practice is so harmful.
Exactly. I mean, you know, we think of rites of passage, I think of bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. You know, I was, what is it, presented as a debutante. I mean, it's bleh, but still, you know, you know, quinceañeras, things that are celebratory.
Yes.
Not things that will potentially kill you either then or now.
Yes, rites of passage should never come at the expense of girls' and women's well-being.
That's right.
And there are other ways to celebrate rites of passage. In fact, since female genital mutilation is seen as a human rights violation and a huge public health concern, movements have been starting up to look at this issue of rites of passage. How do you find alternative rites of passage that are culturally appropriate but without damaging girls for life?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, in Africa there are rites of passage for men, for males as well, but it's more, you're a warrior, you know, you're a fighter, which is great. So why can't that be? Why does the rite of passage for a woman involve her sex organs?
Yes.
Because it doesn't for the men.
No, and it doesn't need to. I think that when you get down to the essence of it, it's a question of power. It's a great way to control women's bodies and take away power before they really get going into adulthood. Because we see that women and girls are 1.5 times as likely to experience pain during sexual intercourse after the practice takes place. It's also a way of really upsetting the balance for childbirth. Many women die in childbirth, children die after the practice, but ultimately it's a way to control women's bodies.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if this is too graphic for people, but people need to know what actually goes on. Various portions of a woman's sex organ, it's cut out.
Yes, they're
often crudely.
Yes, exactly.
Mostly crudely.
Mostly crudely. It often takes place in very unhygienic conditions by someone who's not trained, who might be using tools that are not cleaned. Very big risk of infection and even death. And it can be a variety of different stages. It could be a nick all the way up to full removal of external genitalia.
I mean, can you just imagine, we're full removal, and if you survive this, that is just unbelievable to me. But this causes difficulty. There is no pleasure in sexual intercourse, which is the point. Childbirth, as you said, is put at risk. And just the way a woman's body is supposed to work no longer operates.
Yes, and for me, one of the other huge problems, there are all those health risks. There's the physical damage to the body, but there's also the psychological and the emotional damage. The fact that that girl has the fear leading up to it, and then afterwards, you know, her body is not her own anymore. It has deep traumatic ripplings
Yes.
long after the fact.
Yes, and when I was doing a little research, understanding that one of the ways that that the female genital mutilation realizes itself is that they like sew up the vagina and they make it. You can't have intercourse. You can't have a baby. What are you doing? It seems like the point, if the point is to decrease potential sexualization of women, do the men not understand the risk that a lot of women are rendered infertile after this?
Yes, yes. More and more men are starting to stand up against it because you're absolutely right. It's a problem for both people in their relationship, especially when you're having higher death rates of children and other health problems and psychological problems. And there are movements around the world. We work with many partners around the world, including men's groups, who are starting to really stand up against this. And in truth, it takes both women and men to fight against it. Many times it's done by women, by an older woman, so it's not just something that men are doing against women are doing against women.
Absolutely.
And it needs both to really solve it.
Yeah, because a lot of I'd say the majority of them doing it is older
Yes,
women, and
yes.
It's very upsetting.
It
just really is.
It is, and there are, however, things that work. We know a lot of great awareness-raising campaigns, some of which are funded by the U.S. government, some of which are funded by the UN Trust Fund
Yes.
Against Gender-Based Violence, that are really working because they're taking a culturally appropriate way to build awareness. It's not being imposed.
That's right.
And it's really working with leaders and women and men in the community to figure out, how do we overcome this? What are other solutions? Those are the comprehensive approaches, bringing healthcare workers together with police officers and school education systems to think about, as a society, how do we change the image of this? How do we find those alternative rites of passage?
Elise Young, thank you so much for
Yes.
coming to talk to us about female genital mutilation with Women Thrive. Let's just keep the movement going. Let's
Yes.
keep the conversation going, because there has been a conversation before in this country and then it kind of just falls apart.
Yes.
But we can't. We have to help our sisters in other parts of the world.
And we have a great opportunity right now, actually. The action right now, we have an International Violence Against Women Act that's in the House and the Senate. A lot of the watchers of this show could call their members of Congress and say, we want to pass this bill, because it declares gender-based violence as a top priority of our government.
Okay, tell me what the bill is again.
It's called the International Violence Against Women Act.
Okay, call your congressperson and talk to them about the International
Violence Against Women.
Violence Against Women Act that is going through Congress right now. Call them and let them know you expect them to vote in favor of it.
Absolutely.
Elise Young, thank you so much for joining us and helping to educate us on this horrifying situation. Up next, breaking through gender barriers, the new executive director of the NBA Players Association, D.C. Attorney Michelle Roberts, joins us after the break.